Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Time for the Hurricane Outlook and discussion. It is Sunday, the 6th day of November 2022, and we have something very important to talk about here. The key points with this, possibly a hurricane for Florida. Yes, absolutely. But perhaps more important than that, a very large and impactful weather system overall with significant coastal flooding, beach erosion problems for much of the southeastern United States as well. That is what this background picture shows, all that wind affecting a very large area. A very important event coming up here over the next week or so, starting with now, basically. And I'm going to show you some of the evidence behind why my concern is growing for this system. And I'll explain the difference between subtropical and tropical, and why, for the most part, in terms of sensible impacts that we can feel, that doesn't really matter. These are just labels. All right, let's get on with it. Very big afternoon here as we track what's going on in November. This is why hurricane season runs for 6 months. Here it is. This is the first disturbance, 80% chance of development over the next 2 days, 90% at the 5-day mark. Basically a large low pressure area with the potential to acquire more tropical characteristics, meaning that it focuses more and the winds are closer to the center where they are the strongest. And regardless, though, it's going to probably prompt tropical storm, hurricane watches, storm surge watches, affecting a huge area of coastline over here. We're talking from the Outer Banks of North Carolina, likely, all the way down to the peninsula of Florida, the Keys, the central and northwest Bahamas. Yes, this is a big deal in the making. The other system is, also kind of a large spread out system. It's November. It's harder for these systems to focus initially. Nevertheless, this could also become a subtropical or tropical storm before upper level winds become less favorable. And there you go, 2 areas of high probability for development in the month of November here. So here are our 2 systems. This is the first one up here, kind of losing time. It's running out of time to do much. The thunderstorms are displaced from that low level center, which is right there. This is the other system. This is Invest Area 98L, by the way. I'll just kind of draw that in. And you can see it's got that sort of comma shape to it. It's large and spread out. The energy is over a very large area. But what is going to happen over the next few days? All of the computer models are now agreeing on the general scenario that this system lifts up out of the area of the Southwest Atlantic into the vicinity of the Bahamas, where the atmosphere could sort of flip and become more favorable for this to acquire a more concentrated look and get the classification of a pure tropical cyclone. But as I have said a lot over the last week to 10 days, it seems, these are just labels. These are just what we call it to keep up with stuff on a scientific basis. The impacts, though, don't change. There's no such thing as a subtropical storm surge. I mean, storm surge is storm surge. The wind blowing the water up against the coastline. High waves are high waves, no matter how they get generated. All right, so this is a big system. It's going to impact a lot of people, and it does have the chance to get under a favorable environment and become a pure and fairly strong hurricane as it approaches Florida. That is becoming an increasingly possible scenario. So let's take a look at the reasons why. Why could this happen? Well, first of all, we have to ask some questions. Do we have a seedling and the incipient energy? Yes, we do. There it is. It is spread out, and it's got some work to do. We've already talked about that, but it is there. That's 98L. This is 97L up here. And again, this has a short window left until the upper level winds really do preclude it from developing much further. The other ingredient, and this is a very interesting tweet here from Eric Blake. Eric Blake works at the National Hurricane Center, by the way, so you do see his name at the bottom of a lot of the forecast. It'll say Forecaster Blake. So what is he tweeting about? It's very important that the water temperatures, the anomalies here, he doesn't like that look, he is saying, not approving of them. What do these show? Well, these are warmer than average water temperatures. How warm? Well, looks like to me that's that first shade of orangish yellow right there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just say 5. 5 steps in the gradient. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's about up here. So at least 3/4 to a full degree Celsius above normal as you approach Florida. But the rest of the Atlantic out here is also similarly warmer than it should be. That is very important. We have an anomalously warm water temperature profile to work with. The actual sea surface temperatures, what are those? Well, there's your 26 Celsius line right there. That's 80, roughly 80 degrees Fahrenheit. There's 81 Fahrenheit, or 27 Celsius. There's 28 C, or about 82 Fahrenheit. So yes, water temperatures are conducive for a hurricane to develop. But you don't need a hurricane to get hurricane problems. We really need to address that. Finally, the upper ocean heat content, a very important ingredient. That is also high and primed. It's not been disturbed or otherwise chiseled away, whatever. It's there. These ingredients at the bottom of the atmosphere, so to speak, at the ocean, where everything starts. The ocean is available to provide the energy for this system to eventually become a hurricane. That's if that's all you're concerned about. I know a lot of people get fixated on that. I've used this analogy before. Remember the movie Jaws? When the mayor is talking to the chief, he says, you can't go yelling shark or whatever. You say barracuda, and I'm paraphrasing here. Barracuda, people are like, huh, whatever, but you say shark. I think it's the difference. The same thing applies. That movie has a lot of parallels to how we look at the weather, especially tropical weather. You say tropical storm or subtropical storm, most people dismiss it. And I'm even seeing that on Twitter lately today. It's like, all right, look, hey, believe what you want at your own peril. But I'm telling you, tropical storms, just tropical storms. Let's go visit Houston. Maybe we should do that. Round everybody up that doubts these things and give them a free tour. I don't know how we'd crowdfund it or whatever. Crowdfund the non-believers and show them Houston and how it flooded from just a tropical storm. 2 of them in recent memory, Allison in 2001 and just Tropical Storm Harvey. I think a lot of Houstonians would take offense to just a tropical storm, and there are so many other examples. Subtropical, what is that even? Again, more spread out, less concentrated, but it can still produce big-time impacts, and the ocean looks like it is going to provide the potential fuel. Now it's a matter of, does the atmosphere do something and sort of flip over and make this less spread out, like what you see here. This is the 12Z GFS. So this is all spread out. This is valid in just a few hours from now, 0Z tonight into tomorrow. So yeah, it's all spread out. The energy is over a larger area. It's not bundled just yet. But what about later on? Let's move it out to 36 hours. Starting to get a little bit more focused. Still kind of spread out, though, overall. By 48 to 54 hours and then to 72, absolutely. The GFS sort of sheds the energy around it, this trough that's involved with it right now, and it becomes more bundled and focused right there. Still a large wind field, but it is starting to focus in here. You know what hurricane did that? Joaquin back in 2015. Hurricane Joaquin started from an upper level low. It's all cold core, it's all structural stuff, and it shed that upper level low, developed a warm central core, and it was a powerful hurricane that just brushed Bermuda, and it was a real humdinger, a very strong. I think it reached Category 4 at some point. Not saying this is going to do that, but they can sort of transition and shed those upper level lows that sort of hold them back, and then they become purely tropical, they bundle, and these can do so in a hurry. All right, and as this approaches the Florida coast, it gets more organized, and it starts to really get concerning there that could be a more focused tropical system. We can look down at the 10-meter level of the atmosphere. There's your pressure, 973. Is the GFS overdoing it? I've said this a lot the last few days too. I don't know. I don't know the future, but boy, it has been very consistent. And I'm going to say one more time, I'm just, I'm inviting more people to do this. I know how it works, but I'm tired of the GFS is garbage. It's like, you have to be kidding me. You have no idea what you're talking about. You just don't. All the models have their flaws, and you just don't know exactly what's going to happen. If it was garbage, they would not do it. They wouldn't run it anymore. They wouldn't. And is there room for improvement? Yes. Is this going to get it right this time? I don't know, and neither do you, sitting in your chair tweeting at me or whomever. You don't know either. You just don't know. And if it is right, people in Florida better really look out down near areas east of Lake Okeechobee, because that is a bona fide looking hurricane in the model. Other models are more spread out. We can flip over, I can show you. This is the Canadian at roughly the same time. That's still pretty bundled. The pressure is higher than what the GFS shows, but maybe this time the GFS has the physics right. Maybe it's locking in on something. We don't know for sure. So instead of trying to just, you know what, it's going to do this, or it's going to do that, or it's not going to do this, why don't you take it seriously if you live down there? And if you don't live down there, why are you even chiming in on it? But that's a whole other story. Like, what dog in this fight do you have if you're 500 miles away? Whatever. Bottom line, it's amusing sometimes, and sometimes it's just sad. That's a big storm, even in the Canadian. And if we go over and look at the Euro at its evolution over the next few days, also a very large storm. It's not as focused as the GFS has it, but ironically, it's almost in the exact center of where the GFS has landfall. That's pretty good agreement. Now, which one has the structure right? Yes, I know there's all this argument. The GFS sucks. The Euro is king. Okay, whatever. It's not always the case. Sometimes one does better than the other. It depends on the environment. It depends on a whole bunch of stuff, and none of that matters. What matters is all of that energy over such a large area, piling up the water day after day against the coastline, knocking out power, and disrupting marinas, the cruise industry, all kinds of stuff. People picking up the pieces after Ian. Yeah, it's going to be kind of a big deal down there. Whatever the heck it's called. Hurricane, tropical storm, subtropical, I don't care. I don't care. It's going to be a problem, and people better be taking it seriously and getting ready for it. One way you know that this is coming, watch this. The east coast of the U.S., the southeast, we're starting to get more advisories up here. These are I think this is a gale warning offshore, and there's starting to be some beach hazard statements here along the east coast of Florida. We can click, and I can just show you here as it zooms in. This is at the weather.gov site, and we're already starting to see, what is this, flood warning. That's some stuff left over from Ian. Your gale warnings in the offshore waters, small craft advisory popping up in the nearshore waters, rip current statements. It's coming. And then you're going to start to see coastal flood watches, coastal flood warnings, and a whole host of problems here all the way down the east and southeast coast of Florida. And let me remind you, in case you didn't know, the snowbirds have all moved, well, not all of them, whatever, but they've moved to Florida. Most of them, they're there. A big influx of people. My 7-year-old daughter asked me a little while ago, we were talking about this at lunch, what's a snowbird, she said. And I told her, it's like migrating birds that go from north to south, except it's people. And they do that. They escape the cold and they go to Florida. They go to Arizona or to Texas and elsewhere. But Florida is known as the Sunshine State, so it's inviting for people to come down and generally get away from the misery of the winter. Well, this time there could be a hurricane-ish or full-on hurricane or whatever coming in, and a lot of those people have no idea of what's coming. They don't experience hurricanes because they leave Florida when it also gets 5,000 degrees and they can't handle it anymore. They go north. So they aren't there for the big hurricanes. I'm serious. This is also a compounded problem because of the snowbird population that has descended upon Florida in recent weeks. It's coming, and they're going to be like, what do I do? How do I deal with this? Maybe they don't have supplies yet. I don't know. This is going to be a problem as well. There's more people to deal with. If there are evacuations, if it comes to that, that could be problematic as well. A lot to go over here, a lot to digest, a lot to deal with, and it's only day one, so to speak. We have potentially another week or so of this playing out. Let me go back just to address that. This is the GFS. I kind of stopped it at 96 hours. It goes on, doesn't stop at 96, crosses Florida, at least according to the GFS. Kind of slows down a little bit. The ridge shifts to the east, so that allows the system to gain some latitude and move off to the north and east. Sort of this curve, kind of like this when all is said and done, right? That's what I'm looking at. That could be the path when it's finished, and that is your typical path of a big ridge sitting up here initially, sending it back to the southwest over here. That ridge slides to the east. This gains latitude afterwards. A typical peak season scenario that just happens to be occurring in November. Just the way it is. So yeah, we could be dealing with this for at least the next week in terms of sensible active weather. And then the impacts. There are going to be numerous cases of beach erosion, maybe houses in trouble. Ian caused a lot of damage that's already set up. I mean, I beg of you, please take this seriously. It is a different setup than we saw with Ian, and we're just getting started. We'll have to see how all the pieces fall into place over the coming days. All right? All right, so my plan, let me get back here so I can exit and get this online for you. I'm getting everything ready. I'm headed down to Florida tomorrow. Probably going to stop in Charleston and set something up there. You think, well, why Charleston? Is it coming up here? Again, what is it? Is the center? No, probably not, and not initially at least, but there will be impacts in Charleston, I assure you. Extra high tides because of the full moon, the king tide, the onshore flow. So you bet. I'm going to start in Charleston and work my way down the coast. I've got several people I've been in touch with along Florida's east coast. Going to set up our camera systems, our weather stations. You know the drill by now. And I'm starting tomorrow. So I'm headed to the Sunshine State again. And, you know, that means it must be something serious. And I think just that thumbnail shot right there spells that out nicely, if you ask me. What it ends up being called in the end, forget it. Who cares? I mean, it is going to be a big impact system, and that's what I want you to think about. All right? All right, that is it for me for the rest of this Sunday. Have a good rest of your weekend. If you're in Florida, please be getting ready for this, and do take it seriously. I'll be back in the morning before I check out of here and head south with another update then. I am Mark Sudduth for Hurricane Track. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.